I did not get into one of the schools, and the recruiter, when he had messaged me about it, gave all this list of things I could do instead of getting an MBA. And one of them was to become a cat lady. And I just...
In seriousness? That's... Welcome to Elevate Utah, Utah's #1 growth podcast. I'm Cort Brady, and today we have Lauren Andersen, who is also from Las Vegas. We're representing Las Vegas today in this podcast. Thanks for being on, Lauren.
Awesome. Thank you for having me.
You are the managing director at Rain Global currently. Before that, you worked for BYU in the business program with the student experience. Before that, you were at Bright Dental, pediatric dental, over brand strategy. And before that, you were a customer experience consultant at Breeze Airways.
Yes, that was during my MBA. That was my capstone project.
And where'd you go? Where'd you get your MBA from?
University of Utah.
And you worked at they hired you at BYU after.
And they let me in. It was a miracle.
And when they play each other, who do you cheer for?
If it's football, I really do BYU. I'm so sorry, but my kids are diehard BYU fans.
Okay.
So they've destroyed any merch I have that's from the U. I love the U. It was a great experience.
I'm so curious. What does Rain Global do? Tell me a little bit about it.
So Rain Global is a talent advisory firm. And so we really help people with human capital. So being able to look at, talent and see how can we maximize ROI. So we help people develop teams. We bring in remote staff. Our founder and CEO also founded an executive search firm called ZRG, which is the 7th largest in the world, actually. And so we also have close partnerships with them as well. So we can help people with leadership and different things like that.
And when did you get your MBA?
I got my MBA during the black hole of COVID. 2019 is when I started. So 2019 to 2021.
And what did you do before your MBA?
Before my MBA, I had started an online business.
Okay.
My husband is a pediatric dentist, and he was in residency, school residency, lots of things. And when he was in residency, I started that online business and kind of grew it to a point where I either needed to invest in it or kill it. And I had a friend that was in MBA school, and she was talking to me about it. And I'm like, you're majoring in student council. How did you find this? Which I had been student body president in high school. So I just decided, I'm like, okay, I'm not going to do this business anymore. I'm going to invest in myself. And I killed the baby, if you will, and started studying for the GMAT.
What was the business?
It was called Joliet Market. So it was luxury children's goods. And it was actually a lot of fun. I really enjoyed it. It was like angel wings and little stuffed animal, like cats. But I loved the marketing part of all of that.
Got it.
Really, it was all based on how I hate cats. Also, apologies.
Oh, we share that hatred in common. I'm so curious. That is totally different when someone says, I'm going to invest in myself. I'm talking to friends and they're like, yeah, I'm working for the man. I'm going to go invest in myself and start my own business. And then they jump into an online business or something like that. And yours was, I have my online business. And the phrase you use is, I'm going to invest in myself, go get an MBA, and then work at these large companies. Walk me through that decision-making process.
Yeah. Oh, that's interesting. Actually, I never really thought about that. I always wanted to go to grad school. That was one thing that was always just trying to figure out, what I wanted to do professionally. And I had a lot of time, right? I graduated from college and then we moved immediately, and I had a baby, then I had another baby, then I had another baby, then another one, and just kind of felt like I don't know what I want to do professionally. I don't, even in college, I'm like, I don't know how to do this. And luckily not luckily, my husband was on a career path, and I just really made as many friends as possible and had a really good time. And then when he was done, I had really started the business because I needed an outlet more than anything. And it was something to kind of just figure out who I was. I didn't know that at the time, but it really was just like, okay, I need to create something and kind of figure this out. So it was more a project that kind of started taking off more than anything. but I didn't want to do that business as a career, if that makes sense. I had never considered an MBA. Smart people got MBAs. Like, I remember being at BYU and getting, seeing something on NPAs or MBAs, and I'm like, oh, no, that's not me. And so I had never considered that that's something that I could do. And having this friend do it who had little kids, and I'm just like, how? Like, what are you doing? Tell me about the program. And the more she talked about it, the more I just realized, like, oh, no, that's it. This is where I want to be and what I want to do. And I needed to go somewhere to figure out where to go next, if that makes sense.
Yeah. How old were your kids?
When I started studying for the GMAT, I think my son was 6 weeks old.
Oh my gosh.
I know. Yes. We were living in a townhome. We just moved to Utah, and we had an unfinished basement, and my husband had hung a light bulb downstairs in the basement. And I remember, like, just waking up super early and going and trying to study for the GMAT. And I hadn't taken a math class in like over a decade. The other part, like reading comprehension, I'm like, got it. That part was always fine. But I got a tutor. I took a class. It took me a year to get my score where it needed to be. And I probably took like 12 practice tests. And my practice tests kept getting better and better and better. And I actually was doing phenomenal in the practice tests. And then I would take the real test and I would bomb it. And my math therapist, that's what I called him, after the fourth time, he was like, listen, this is in you. Like, you can't fake these scores on these practice tests. Stop focusing on the content. Focus on your strategy. And I did, and I raised my score by almost 100 points.
What does that mean? Focus on the strategy, not the content.
So the GMAT is a total beast, and in the quantitative section, the way that they ask questions is kind of confusing. And so there's a strategy to understanding what question is being asked in order to really answer it.
Interesting. So your kids were newborn to...
When I actually started the program, 2019, my son was just barely 2. So I had a 2-year-old, almost 5, 7, and 9.
You're such a freaking rock star. That's amazing. I have little kids, and my wife is also a rock star, and I don't know, she outworks me and runs circles around me. I can't imagine her doing what she's doing and studying for the GMAT.
Well, at the beginning, I didn't tell anybody.
You didn't tell your husband?
Well, no, he knew. He wasn't really actually on board with it. It took him a while, and bless his heart, he is unbelievably supportive. I couldn't do anything I do without him now. But no, at the beginning, I didn't want anyone to know, especially after I'd taken the first test and I did so poorly. I'm like, oh, what if I fail? Like, what if nothing comes from this? And so, no, I didn't tell anybody. And then as kind of time went on, and I have this, a tutor and all these different things, then I started caring. And I'm like, okay, I'm going to have to ask my neighbor to walk my kindergartner to school at, because she was in afternoon kindergarten, because my baby's asleep and that's prime time. Like, that's when I study. I would wake up early. I mean, just trying to find all these different times. And we bought a house and remodeled it in this time too. So there was just so much going on. And I just remember thinking, like, I'm crazy. This is never going to work. And so just don't tell anybody. And then it doesn't matter if it doesn't work. But it didn't turn out that way. I had to start telling people. And then, then I would have a test and people like, hey, how'd you do? And I'm like, not good. I didn't want to tell you. If I hadn't have told you this, I, wouldn't have to follow up. But then when I did, that last time, you can only take it 5 times in a calendar year. And the last time that I took it and got the score I needed, then I had all these people celebrating with me. And I had not anticipated how good that would feel.
That's such a cool story. Congratulations.
Thank you. Thank you.
That's phenomenal. Well, I have one more question. Can I ask you one more question about this? There's a lot of moms that are I've had a couple moms on the podcast that are just ballers, like massive hundreds of millions of dollars of assets that they manage. Multiple companies start, like, just so phenomenal. What advice do you have to a mom that's like, I have this itch, I want to go, but don't know how I'm going to do it, or how I'm going to be perceived, or how I'm going to navigate all the complexities here? What would you tell them?
I would say that your fears are warranted, that they don't come from nowhere. You know, when I first started telling people that what I was doing, I was not well received because you're holding up a mirror to people in a lot of ways. And I had people say terrible things to me. So you can't go in thinking outside validation is going to get you where you want to go, because it's not. You have to know, okay, I'm going to take a step forward and see if this is what I want to do. And when you take that step, you learn a lot of information, and you can pivot or you can keep going. But one thing that I would highly, highly encourage is find mentors, because it's an incredibly difficult thing to navigate. And I could not do what I do if it didn't fuel me. And so I think that's something too, of like finding the things that fuel you. And those are the things you need to do, because if it doesn't fuel you, it's not going to be sustainable.
What do people say?
Oh gosh. I had gone, I started job shadowing because I'm like, hey, I want to kind of get an idea of, what I would be interested in, things like that. And one of the times I had gone to a pretty prominent company in Utah County with the project manager. He had a meeting with his boss, probably his boss's boss. I mean, kind of upper level people. And we go in, we have the meeting, and at the end, one of the people, I don't know if it was an executive or who it was, came up to me smiling, and he just said, are you actually interested in any of this, or are you just bored at home? And I remember laughing and then getting in the car and shaking, and I'm like, that was so rude. It was so rude. Also, you've obviously never been a full-time caregiver. No one is bored at home. That is not an option. That's not a thing. But yeah, I had people, a lot of things.
It didn't deter you though. Was it added fuel or was it neutral?
Oh, fuel.
It was fuel.
Oh, it was so fuel. Yes. And that was one thing, as, things happened, I kind of realized like, okay, actually, this is great content. And I don't have a social media, like I don't have a personal social media account, but just in my own life, like instead of viewing these things as I'm a failure, what am I doing? It was kind of like, oh, this is going to be a really good story one day. And I, like, even with the MBA, I had applied to 2 different schools. I did not get into one of the schools, and the recruiter, when he had messaged me about it, gave all this list of things I could do instead of getting an MBA. And one of them was to become a cat lady. And I just...
In seriousness? That's so...
That was one of the things. He was probably trying to be funny. You know what I mean? Just, it was unprofessional.
He didn't know you had a loathing for cats, which made it even worse though, right?
Who knows? Anyway, so things like that where, at the time you're like, oh my gosh, this is unbelievable. Also, I'm writing this down because this is going to be a great story one day.
Oh my gosh. Well, there's a story I love of I forgot her name. She sold her company to L'Oreal for $1.2 billion. And it was cosmetic care for women with eczema. And you heard this story? She had eczema. She was a news anchor for her local, whatever it was. And someone said, hey, like your makeup's coming off or something. But her eczema was coming, and she said, I got to create something. So she created this product that worked for her, and she wanted to go and build this massive company. And she went to this private equity fund manager and said, here's my idea. Here's what I want to do. And he came back to her after all the deliberation, all of the negotiations, and said, hey, we're not gonna give you the funds for this. And it was kind of like, oh my gosh, like this is like the classic story. Like this is the 99th person, right, that we're talking to. We tried every other avenue, kind of our last hope. And he said, we're not gonna give you the funds. And she said, well, like, can you tell me why? Like, we've gone through this whole process. I thought we were a good candidate. Like, the product works. There's a huge market. The total addressable market is massive. And he said, you want the real answer or the politically correct answer? And she said, the real answer. And he said, I don't think someone with your physique is going to be able to sell this product. And so as the vision-led founder, we're not going to invest in you. That's the real answer. And she is saying this on stage, and she said, we did this and this and this, and we pivoted, and like almost exact, like I was shaking, because I can't believe that I got responded to this way. And this was the reason.
Yeah.
And it was this dude in a suit, like, how dare he? She didn't say, how dare he? She wasn't upset at him. It was frustration with the situation. And I can't believe this is the reason. And fast forward a few years later, she sells her company to L'Oreal, a portion of it, stays on as the CEO. It's a $1.2 billion transaction.
Unbelievable.
And she needs somebody to run her acquisition strategy or something, and puts out a search, and this guy applies, and she hires him
She hired
in the company.
him? No.
And he had the class after that fact, but he had the class to say when she went public, hey, I just want to let you know, congratulations, I was wrong. So sent her an email. So
Yeah.
good on him. But just like such a vindicating story of just, this is awesome, you got it.
Yes.
So congratulations on getting the MBA. That's massive. And then from your master's, you went into, is that where you consulted at Breeze during your MBA program?
That was my capstone project.
And then what did you do?
Then I went to BYU. So my grandpa was a dean at BYU for 20 years, and I loved to learn. And that was something that I thought, well, maybe I'll go get a PhD. I didn't really know what I wanted to do next. This is kind of the story of, okay, what's next? What's next? And I had a friend who had worked in the experience design and management program and just said, you need to apply for this job. I'm like, I am not working at BYU.
After you're getting your MBA from the U.
Well, after the cat story. Anyways, and so I am not working at BYU, and she just called me and she's like, listen, they're meeting in an hour. They're opening up the application. You're applying. You want to work with this department. And I'm like, fine, I don't care. I'll go to this dumb interview. And, she was right. I loved the department. I loved the people. I loved working with students. And especially, I would have students that would come and just say, oh, can I talk to you about school? I'm like, yeah, sure. And they would come, they would meet with me. And every single time without fail, it was, can you tell me about being a working mom? And I'm like, sure. And it just happened over and over and over and over again. And so that was one thing where I really learned, like, okay, I'm figuring this out kind of blind. I mean, my mom was an entrepreneur. She was always starting businesses, but I didn't have anyone in my life that was working in a corporate setting, that got an MBA. I think I'm the first, I know this actually, I am the first female in my dad's family to get an advanced degree. And so looking and seeing all these, these young women that would come in, just so earnest, I just realized like, oh, okay, me being here shows you what's possible, which is something that I had seen in others. My director at the U, she was a mom, she had 4 kids, and it was just one of those things you're like, okay, this is logistically possible, without even talking to her about any of those things, and realizing that I was now fulfilling that for other people was really powerful and motivating for me. So I got the job. I was at BYU and I loved it. I really did. But I figured out almost immediately that a PhD was not for me, that I don't want to do research. I do love teaching, and maybe that can be another career one day. But I was there for about a year and a half when a colleague in another department, I was kind of talking to her about what I was doing, and she looked at me and she goes, oh, honey, you're too ambitious to be here. You need to quit. And I just was like, I'm like trying to tell you what I'm trying to do. She goes, no, I know. And so I kind of set it up so that I could end when they had their student leadership in place, that they were in a good spot. And I quit without a job or an idea of what I was going to do. And I skied for a season, which was really fun. I hung out with my friends, what I had not been able to do. That is one thing about being a working mom, is there's not a lot of women in at least Utah County in the professional workforce. So it's kind of lonely, and I had not anticipated that. And so that was one thing that I just fully embraced. Like, okay, I'm going to take a little break, kind of get an idea of what I want to do. And then I started applying for jobs, and probably applied for, 50, 60, 70 things. And I kept getting to this place of like, what I thought probably were last round interviews. And it's like, oh, we're no longer hiring for this position. And my brother-in-law, who can get anybody a job, was like, I've never seen this, just so you know. I'm like, I don't think that's encouraging. Anyways, but I had been the point of contact for executives that wanted to hire our students, not because it was my job, but because of circumstances, it wasn't happening. And so I knew it was important. And someone had kind of said to me once, like, be at the place where you can learn the most and be in the most contact with other people. Like, okay, there's a great opportunity. And so I had done the thing that I swore I'd never do. And I put that I was open to work on LinkedIn. And my boss now had reached out on LinkedIn. He's like, hey, call me. You know, I just want to talk to you. I called him and his name was in my phone. And I'm like, I have no idea who this person is. But when I looked at the text messages, he had reached out probably a year prior asking about our students. We had never connected. But anyways, so it's just this very strange twist to where I got now. I didn't know that like talent advisory was a thing. I have kind of tripped into this, and I've heard that from a lot of people that are kind of in this industry. Like they've tripped into this industry, and I love it. Love where I am, but I'm also 38, so it took me a while to kind of get there.
You said something that reminded me of a quote that I love, that you said, I just being there is evidence that they could do it, for these working moms. And there's a quote that says, this poem, it says, as we're liberated from our own fears, our presence automatically gives others the ability to do the same. And you're exemplifying that, which I think is so cool. Would you mind touching, I want to come back to like what talent advisory is, what your day-to-day looks like. There's two things I want to touch on. One is the loneliness factor, which I don't think you're unique in the business world, for sure being a woman in the business world, but it's so fascinating to hear how often the word lonely gets thrown around on this podcast. And so I want to talk about that. And I also would love if there's anything in those conversations with the students, like me working here as evidence that you can work as a mom, is there anything that you could share for the founders listening or the builders listening, that it's, hey, here's a dynamic that you don't understand about the moms working in your business that I wish they would understand?
Interesting. You know, I've moved a lot, and every time I would get to a new place, like social media started in 2010, 2011, I think is when Instagram started. And I think my husband was in dental school at that point. So I didn't have it in college, didn't have it in high school. And but we were on I was on a Google thread with some friends. And I remember getting to this point, we had moved to Dallas and I was so lonely, and I just used that as, I didn't even know all the people on there very well. But people would just all during the day, it was almost like a chat. And I remember just deciding, like, I have to cut this off because I need to be lonely enough that it makes me contact somebody. And I have had to do that multiple times just to be able, even canceling my social media account. I deleted it. I didn't even download anything. I just deleted it. And I'm like, I want to see I want to run into someone at the airport and have no idea what they ate yesterday. I mean, I didn't have Facebook. It started when my freshman year of college, and I never did it. I have to have it now for work. But people I love people almost probably to a fault. And so this has been a really interesting experience, both having to learn how to have friends as an adult, which is difficult, which people don't explain that to you. I don't know if you felt this way. In dental school, it was so fun. We all were in the exact same boat. We were doing the same things. Our kids were the same ages. We're in the same amount of debt. And then we got a real job, and it changed, and all of our friends left. And so becoming an adult and learning how to make friends is difficult. Taking the time aspect, it takes time to make friends. And time is not something that I have in abundance right now. And so that's been tricky, of trying to figure out how I didn't grow up here. So I don't have, a ton of friends here from growing up here, and people have really strong families, and I have family here. So I am close with my family. Yeah, I think that, there is the social media aspect on it, on top of it, where people just aren't reaching out to other people. But I think at the end of the day, it's like spending time with people, not online, but person to person. That's what we're starving for in a lot of ways.
I like that you said sometimes life isn't bad enough to actually make a change, and you needed to cut that Google chat off entirely. Yes. So it was like, okay, now I'm going to go have deep, meaningful relationships, because the void will be even greater than it was before. I read lots of Dr. Seuss since we have little kids, and the book, The Places You'll Go.
Yes.
And there's the page about loneliness, and lonely is something you'll be quite a lot.
Yes.
My wife hates that. She's like, guys, you'll never be lonely. Don't listen to that. I'm like, oh, Henry, this is neither a good nor bad part of life, but it will be a part of life that you get to lean into. And I've loved that thought as like, oh, it's my privilege to be in the loneliness here, even though it sucks. It is this stage of life, which not even necessarily makes the connection that much better, but that I get to enjoy what this emotion is in all of its entirety.
I don't know that I enjoy it, but I do totally agree with you. And that book has a lot of wisdom in it. One thing that I've also realized is, like, being a millennial, I am forever in between two worlds, right? I know what it was like pre-Netflix, pre-Instagram. I had a flip phone in high school. I had like 60 minutes to it, so. And then
the Razor came out.
I did we have a Razor? I know I had to share it with my sister. It was not a Razor. And anyways, that's another story for another day. But and now being in this situation where I'm working with boomers and Gen X and then working with Gen Z and being able to understand them. I think that that's something that's really been an advantage of experiencing things like loneliness, to be able to see, like, okay, my loneliness is not a result of social media, but I understand what it feels like, and I also know how to crawl out of it. And so being able to have those difficult experiences, those things that you don't want them to be a part of your story, right? Yeah. But going through them and learning how to be grateful for your challenges and problems, because it also helps you to relate to a lot of different people. Because it turns out human problems are human, and we're all human.
Really the only problems that need solving. Okay, the other question, people are listening and are working next to or are working moms. What's the insight or framework shift or paradigm shift that you wish you could, the message to share, spread?
The message to share. Oh, dear. I remember I had a coworker ask me, I don't know if he asked me or how it got brought up, but he was just kind of saying, what time do you wake up? And I said, 5:20, assuming I slept through the night. And he's like, what? Anyways, and I had said a few other things about my day, and all of a sudden I'm like, oh shoot, I'm not going to actually tell you the truth. Do you know what I mean? Like, logistically, I'm not telling you what I do. Like, I live and die by calendars, and I think that it would probably expose how crazy I am. So, my boss has been really good about family is important. And I don't want you to get to a place 5 years from now where you look back and you regret something, and like take that into account when you're making decisions. And so that is one thing that I think, just saying it out loud, like living in this community, I know that there's a lot of people that have, that are married, that have kids, that think, oh yes, no, I support this fully. But if you don't say it out loud, then people don't know, right? And it is a different experience. I'd love to have a stay-at-home parent that was doing all these things. I have the second best thing, but it's a lot. It's a lot.
One of the girls, her name's Crystal Lee Beck. We had her on the podcast, and she owns Comic Copywriters. And she posted on LinkedIn recently that you have about 0.5 seconds when your employee tells you they're pregnant to set the tone of telling them exactly what their life is going to be like for the next 3 or 4 months till that baby gets here, and what it's going to be like after. And it was such like Men, you don't think about that, right? Like that would never cross my mind. I was so appreciative of her sharing that perspective.
You know, and one thing to that as well of just this idea that when you grow up just thinking, you know, what do I want to be when I grow up? I'm going to go and I'm going to do that. You never have to have this identity crisis in that way. I know you can have it in different ways, but growing up in a conservative place, and there's a lot of people that do a lot of different things, but when you tell someone you're going to be a nurse or you're going to go to nursing school, you get a very different response as a female than saying, I want to be a doctor. Saying I want to go to get an MBA is very different than I'm going to go get a job. And there's so much just that goes into, am I doing the right thing? That I don't think men have to wrestle with, in this idea of there's a trade-off here of time. Like, time is limited. I have all these mixed messages of what the right thing is, just trying to decide, do I have a career? Do I not have a career? And, you know, you have these messages of, oh, I would never let my daughter be a stay-at-home mom ever. Or, you know, you shouldn't be having kids. You should only be focusing on a career. Don't limit yourself, all of these things. And I don't agree with those either, but there are real things that you have to navigate that are just more complex, that I just think it's just something to know. But I think it also can kind of get like a landmine where people just don't want to engage. Do you know what I mean? So that's another thing too. And that's something that I think, not just with the women in your office, but just women in business. You know, one thing I loved about the U is being able to go and have people just treat me like a human. People were not scared of me, where they were not hesitant to talk to me. It was just like, you're a human. And I think that's something, you know, going to events and going to different things, just talking to people, talking to women in business, because they're humans.
Tell me about talent advisory.
Okay.
What does that entail?
It's a lot of things. So we really do staff augmentation is kind of our main product, where we have offshore workers and that we put within a company. So you have your on-site management, and then I don't know if you've heard of like the jobs to be done framework.
Yeah, Clayton Christensen.
Okay. So kind of looking at like high level and low level tasks and trying to make sure that you're optimizing for the talent that's in the room, right? So like in healthcare, you have people that if they're patient facing, you want them with the patients. And the skill set to be with the patient is very different than the skill set to do like insurance verification or medical billing. And so that's something that we would come in and say, hey, you can hire somebody remotely that can do insurance verification or they can do medical billing, so that your in-office people are at their highest and best use. So just trying to help companies kind of control costs around payroll and also increase valuation. I mean, it's a lever. It's a profitability lever for sure.
So there's companies that are consultative in their approach, from we're going to help you figure out what the job to be done is and then recommend solutions. There's other companies that I have seen that are, you tell us what you need and we'll get this person. It sounds like you guys might be consultative and then we're going to help you solve the problem. But you guys do like root cause analysis with the companies you're working with and help them figure out what the right tool is for the jobs that need to be done.
Yes, I definitely say that, of coming in and like even after we've put people in a company, we still have account managers that go in once or twice a week for even several hours during that time, just to be available to help managers. I have been in that role before too. And that's a really incredible role, because I'm working with managers and I would have people come in and just say, okay, I have this situation. Can you help me navigate this? And so that is one thing that I really love about working with Rain, is it's not, okay, how can we get a foot in the door? Oh, great. Okay, moving on. It's like we align incentives for both parties.
I love that. I share the same love of people and their intricacies. If I were to go back to school, I thought so much about going back for behavioral psychology or neurological performance. Like, it'd be so fascinating to dive deep in there. I wish I could live like
I've seen your
12
books. That's
lives.
exactly what
Do I have up there? Is that what I have up there?
Mindset, good to great, 0 to 1. Yes.
These are just the best looking ones. And my wife,
I don't believe it.
I've filled the 6 at the house, so my wife won't let me keep any more at the house. So here they are behind us. You mentioned, so we talk in every podcast, your story, which has been amazing. Thank you for sharing it and being so vulnerable. And then we also talk about something you're passionate about or feel expert in. And you said soft skills. Can you talk about first what are soft skills? If that's not a phrase someone's familiar with.
Yeah. So soft skills, really, it's interpersonal skills of being able to read the room and give an appropriate response. I think is probably the most succinct way to kind of talk about it. And, that is something where when I was growing up, people were pushing, STEM. You want to do math, you want to do science, you can do all these things. And I was really good at, reading comprehension. I'm like, no one can really brag about that. And people. And so I always felt like I have nothing to offer. I don't know. I don't know. I don't want to do all of these other careers. And getting into the business world, I love business so much because of how important it is to understand people. It's solving problems, right? It's trading resources with other people to solve problems. And you want to work with people who you like and trust. And it is something that just using common sense. I love that so much, of being able to come in and figure out kind of what's going on. Most business problems are people problems. I had a situation where I had an employee that was not doing their job, and I had, given them honest feedback, and then brought her in because I was going to let her go. And when I was telling her about it, I said, from the very beginning, I just said, my job, I care more that you trust me than you like me, which is not true. I actually really care if you like me, but I'm saying this because it keeps me on track. And this role, these are the requirements for the role. When you don't do them, it lets the team down, and this just has to get done. And so if you can't get it done, that's okay, because I know you have lots of other commitments. Then we'll just have somebody else do it, because it just needs to get done. And I can tell it's not a priority to you. And she was shocked. And, just coming in, I'm like, okay, you have these other things. So if you need to decide what you want, do you want this? Do you want that? Do you want that? And you need to prioritize. And I had her come back, and she told me, no, I want this. This is what I want. I quit this other thing to make more time for this so I can do this well. I'm like, okay, that's fine. But you have to meet with me once a week. And I'm going to be really honest with you about how things were going. And I walked out and kind of told, it wasn't my boss, but another colleague, kind of what happened. And he said, oh, we usually just kind of deal with it. Like, well, they're not doing their job. Okay, everyone accommodate. He didn't say that, but that was the reality. And I just thought being honest with someone is the kindest thing you can do. I mean, going into that to just say, I have respect for you, and I know that you can do this, but this is the reality of the situation, and you're an adult. So I'm going to talk to you like you're an adult, because people can tell when you're not. And that is something that I've realized, just having those soft skills to have those difficult conversations. My boss did say at the time, like, if you're good at this, people have you do it. And that was I'm like, oh no. But I think it's important, just being able to deal not just with the good things, but also the frustrations and those other things, because, life's a group project, and you're going to bump into each other. And if you can't figure out how to work with people in an effective way, you can have a rough go.
Feedback is such a gift. I consult with CEOs, and one of them I was consulting with, I was like, okay, here's your new schedule. We're going to take the strategy we just put together over the last 2 days. We're going to distill it down into individual scorecards for everyone. And your job is to meet with each of your direct reports on a weekly basis for 30 minutes to ask them how they're doing and then give them improvements. and give them suggestions and help coach them through them. And he said, man, this CEO, by the way, is one of the most loving, kind, cares deeply, deeply about his people. If there's someone that needs to be let go, he's like, is there any other way? Like, can we figure out how to get this person? Because of that, the other side of that coin is he's always constantly stressed because there's not 100% A players or A and B players or some C players in the organization. And he said, man, like, I'm so stressed. Like, I have to be in these meetings for 30 minutes. Can we do them like once a month, or can they be 15 or 10 minutes? And I said, this is your gift to them. Like, this is your perk. I use the phrase, I was being a mirror to people, and it wasn't to their benefit, maybe because they weren't looking for that mirror. But if somebody's working for a company and they get to have their CEO, someone they respect, hopefully hold up a mirror to them every week and say, here's what you committed to. How did you do? What are you committing to this next week? And what are you going to keep and stop and continue doing so that this next week turns out even better than this last week turned out? And usually that's focused specifically on the KPIs in the business, but business and relationships and health all kind of merge in our new post-COVID world. And what a gift a CEO or a leader can give their people having those conversations.
And also recognizing that I can't care more about my comfort than someone else's growth.
Yeah.
And often when we don't want to get, and I'm not saying it's about your CEO, I don't know, I'm probably a lovely human, but being a people pleaser, when I don't want to have those conversations, it's like a canary in the coal mine. Like, I want them to like me. That's why I don't want to have the conversation, not because it's not true or that it wouldn't benefit that person. And so that's when I have to have my own, really confronting myself of, is this something that is going to make them better? Or is this a problem that could derail something? Because if it is, and I know it, and I'm in a position to say something and I don't, that is not kind. It's not kind.
Who is maybe the best is a hard question. Who is a top 3 example that is the best at interpersonal or soft skills that you've gotten to know in your life?
Oh, that is a really good question. My mom, actually, hands down, she's 1, 2, and 3. I just remember growing up, I was just incredibly shy. I was so shy. I wouldn't talk to people. She was always pushing me into things. Anytime I asked for help, she's like, you're a smart girl, you can figure it out. She's a natural extrovert. And I just remember studying her and how she interacts with people. And I asked my sister this, and she's like, what are you talking about? No, I never did that. I'm like, oh, okay. But I did. I just remember studying her, and even now. And she's so gracious. And she's even told me stories where she's done things that have been ungracious or rude, or, said something about someone that they overheard, and how to respond and what to do. And I mean, I've been in situations where, I've been rude to someone in the line at Costco and had to turn around, walk back in, and apologize, because it's like, that's what my mom would have done. But she's so good at just being positive momentum and just making other people feel comfortable. I think she's an incredible hostess. And I think that those skills are exactly the things that, in studying those things, that are helping me be successful now. And my dad, he's the one, if we were sick, he was there. And he would always say, remember, if something happened, my parents were never the ones to be like, oh, people, they're just jealous. My mom was always like, well, you don't know the context. You don't know what's going on in their life. And my dad would say, like, remember how this feels so that you don't do it to somebody else. Mm. And I think having both of them, that kind of yin and yang in my life, has been really foundational to have these people that I can look to and as examples of really how to behave. And Emily Post, I mean, I don't know if people know who she is anymore. That was always, I don't know her, but just her work.
I don't know Emily Post.
You don't know Emily Post? It's all manners. Anyways, etiquette.
I have one more question for you. And it's 2 questions, but you only need to answer one of them.
Oh, okay.
So one of the questions you could answer is, if you were to be able to talk to yourself 10 years ago, what advice would you give yourself? The other side of the question that you're welcome to answer, you can answer both if you'd like.
Okay.
But the other side of the question is, if yourself 3 years from now was sitting across from you, what do you think she would likely tell you?
Oh, snap. They would probably both be the same answer. I think so 10 years ago, my husband was in dental school 10 years ago. Actually, it would both be the same. Like, the things that you are insecure about and that you are worried about are futile, and they're going to hold you back. Like, let them go. Let them go. And I think that that's myself 3 years from now. Like, do not be ruled by your fears.
This has been awesome. Thanks so much, Lauren.
Thank you, Cort. I really appreciate it.